Sarah was chopping carrots in the kitchen, humming to herself, when the doorbell rang. She wiped her hands on a towel and went to answer it, expecting a delivery. Instead, she found Mike, Tom's best friend, standing there looking like he'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his clothes were rumpled. Great, just what I needed tonight, she thought, but plastered on a polite smile. Hey, Mike, everything okay? Not really, he said, his voice raw. I had a massive fight with Jenna. She kicked me out. Can I crash here for a few days? Sarah hesitated. The last thing she wanted was to deal with someone else's drama, but then she saw the look of concern on Tom's face as he appeared behind her. Of course, Mike. Come in, she said reluctantly. Dinner was awkward. Sarah couldn't help but notice Mike staring at her more than usual. It was unsettling, but Tom seemed oblivious, chattering on about work and their upcoming anniversary trip. Sarah, this is really great, Mike said, his eyes never leaving hers. You deserve more appreciation. Thanks, she replied, feeling a little creeped out. As she cleared the table, Mike offered to help. He leaned in closer than necessary and whispered, You really do deserve more attention. Sarah brushed it off, laughing nervously. Oh, stop it, you're just tired. Later that night, a noise woke her. Groggily, she slipped out of bed and went to the living room to find Mike sitting on the couch, staring into the dark. Mike, what are you doing up? I couldn't sleep, he said. It's just, I'm so lonely, Sarah. I envy Tom. He's so lucky to have you. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. It's late, Mike. You should try to get some rest. Mike stood up, stepping closer. You have no idea how lucky he is. Before she could respond, Tom appeared, rubbing his eyes. Everything okay out here? Yeah, just couldn't sleep, Mike said, retreating. Sarah quickly excused herself, feeling Tom's presence was the only thing keeping Mike in check. The next morning, Tom suggested she take Mike for a walk to lift his spirits. She agreed, albeit reluctantly. As they strolled through the neighborhood, Mike started spilling intimate details about his past relationships. His tone shifted, and he started hinting at his attraction to her. Mike, we should head back, she said, trying to cut the conversation short. As they turned to go home, Mike's hand brushed against hers. It felt intentional. She yanked her hand away, feeling violated. How was the walk? Tom asked cheerfully when they got back. Fine, Sarah lied, forcing a smile. Inside, she was screaming. Something was definitely off. Later, she overheard Mike on the phone with a friend, talking about his stay. Yeah, it's perfect. Just like we planned, he said. A cold wave of paranoia washed over her. What plan? She decided not to say anything to Tom. Maybe she was overreacting. She didn't want to cause drama over a misunderstanding. That evening, Mike handed her a small box. A thank you for letting me stay, he said. Inside was a bracelet, expensive looking and completely inappropriate. Mike, I can't accept this, she protested. Please, I insist, he said. Tom, thinking it was a nice gesture, urged her to keep it. Reluctantly, she did, but she hid it in a drawer, feeling its presence like a thorn in her side. As Sarah lay in bed that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was at the center of something she didn't fully understand. The unease gnawed at her, making it hard to sleep. She glanced at Tom, sleeping peacefully beside her, and wondered how long this facade of normalcy could last. Sarah's day started with an unexpected confession that felt like a bad dream. She was in the kitchen, slicing vegetables, when Mike cornered her. His eyes were intense, too intense, and he stepped closer, too close for comfort. Sarah, he began, his voice low and earnest, I need to tell you something. I've been holding this in for too long. I'm attracted to you. I always have been. Being here, it's just made me realize how strong those feelings are. Sarah's knife slipped, nearly cutting her finger instead of the carrot. She stared at him, stunned. Mike, this is inappropriate. You're Tom's best friend. How can you even say that? He looked pained, as if her rejection physically hurt him. I know, and I'm sorry. I just couldn't keep it in any longer. It's been eating me alive. Trapped. That was how she felt. Trapped in her own kitchen, her sanctuary invaded. She backed away, shaking her head. This has to stop, Mike. It's not right. Mike apologized, but it didn't feel genuine. The damage was done. She spent the rest of the day on edge, avoiding him as much as possible. Later, while gardening, she nicked her hand on a thorn. Before she could even process the pain, Mike was there, fussing over her like a hawk. He insisted on bandaging her hand, his touch lingering in a way that made her skin crawl. Tom walked in just as Mike was finishing up. "Thanks for helping, Mike," he said, completely missing the tension in the air. "Sure thing, Tom. Just looking out for Sarah," Mike replied, his eyes never leaving hers. That night, Sarah locked the bedroom door. Tom found it odd but didn't push the issue. She needed that small barrier between her and Mike, a thin layer of security that made her feel slightly safer. It was a good thing, too. In the dead of night, she heard the doorknob rattle. Mike's voice came through the door, saying he needed something from Tom. Sarah held her breath until he left, her heart pounding in her chest. The next day brought another curveball. Dave, an old friend of Tom's, dropped by unannounced. Mike and Dave exchanged a look that made Sarah's skin prick. Dinner was tense, with Dave making comments about how lucky Tom was to have her and how awkward it must be for Mike. Sarah forced a smile, but inside, she was screaming. Late that night, she overheard Mike and Dave talking. Words like timing and opportunity floated through the air, making her blood run cold. She tried to talk to Tom about it, but he brushed her off. "You're overthinking things, Sarah," he said. "Mike's our friend. He wouldn't do anything to hurt us." "Yeah, right." She found a note in her purse the next day, written in Mike's handwriting. "Meet me tonight. We need to talk." She felt a sickening lurch in her stomach but decided to confront him. That night, in the backyard, Mike tried to convince her to leave Tom. "We belong together, Sarah. You know it. Tom doesn't appreciate you like I do." Sarah's anger flared. "No, Mike. This is insane. You need to leave us alone." Mike's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, Sarah." The next morning, Mike announced he was leaving, saying he'd resolved things with his girlfriend. Sarah felt a wave of relief but couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Tom was happy for Mike but noticed her unease. Finally, Sarah told Tom everything. The confessions, the unwanted touches, the late-night conversations. Tom was shocked, promising to keep an eye on things, but the damage was done. The seeds of doubt and fear had been planted, and Sarah knew it would take a lot more than promises to feel safe again. The doorbell rang again, and Sarah's stomach dropped. Not this again. She opened the door, and there stood Mike, looking even more haggard than before, this time with a scruffy-looking guy beside him. "Sarah, I know it's a lot to ask, but Jenna kicked me out again. This is Jake, a friend. Can we stay here for a bit?" For a moment, Sarah considered slamming the door in his face, but Tom appeared, guilt written all over his face. "Of course, Mike. Come in," he said, ignoring Sarah's silent plea for sanity. Jake's presence was immediately unsettling. He had a way of looking around that made Sarah's skin crawl, as if he was sizing up the place. Tom tried to reassure her, promising to handle things if they got out of hand. "Yeah, right. We've seen how well that goes," she thought, biting back a sarcastic retort. A few nights later, Sarah woke up to find Jake standing in the hallway. His excuse? "I was looking for the bathroom." His eyes told a different story, one that made her feel cold all over. "Tom, you need to talk to him. This is getting out of hand," she insisted the next morning. Tom confronted Jake, who mumbled an apology, but the damage was done. Sarah started locking their bedroom door again, but it didn't help the growing sense of unease. While cleaning the living room, Sarah's worst fears materialized. Behind a stack of books, she found a small hidden camera. Her heart pounded as she turned it over in her hands, horror sinking in. Confronting Mike and Jake, they both denied any knowledge, their lies as transparent as glass. Tom's anger was a storm. "Get out, both of you," he demanded. They pleaded innocence, claiming someone else must have planted it. Right, because hidden cameras just appear out of nowhere, she thought bitterly. Their departure was soon followed by an unexpected visitor. A detective at their door, looking for Mike and Jake, who were suspects in a theft case. Sarah felt a strange mix of fear and relief as Tom helped the detective, hoping this would finally rid them of Mike and his shady friend. Mike and Jake were questioned but released due to lack of evidence, leaving a cloud of unresolved tension hanging over their home. Tom's faith in Mike crumbled, and he decided to cut ties. Sarah backed him up, craving the peace they so desperately needed. Mike didn't take it well. "You're making a mistake, Tom," he warned, leaving with a look that promised trouble. Even after they left, Sarah felt eyes on her. Strange cars loitered outside their house, and anonymous, threatening messages started appearing. Tom installed security cameras and changed the locks, but Sarah's anxiety only deepened. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford, every creak and whisper a potential threat. One night, unable to sleep, she decided to use Tom's computer to distract herself. That's when she found it. A hidden folder filled with messages between Tom and Mike, detailing a plan to scare her. Betrayal washed over her like a cold wave. She confronted Tom, her voice shaking with a mix of fury and hurt. Tom broke down, admitting Mike had manipulated him into participating in a twisted scheme. "I backed out," he insisted, but the trust between them shattered into pieces. Sarah felt trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from, her home no longer a sanctuary but a cage of paranoia and fear. She couldn't trust her husband, and the shadow of Mike's presence lingered like a bad dream. Sitting on the edge of her bed, Sarah knew one thing for sure: she had to take control of her life back. No more waiting for things to get better. She needed to find a way out of this mess, even if it meant facing the darkness head-on. Sarah stood in the middle of the living room, her heart pounding as she packed a suitcase. The decision to leave Tom wasn't easy, but staying felt impossible. She needed space, somewhere she could breathe without the shadow of Mike hanging over her. "Sarah, please don't go," Tom begged, his voice cracking. "I need time, Tom. I need to clear my head," she said, avoiding his gaze. She didn't trust herself to look at him, not without feeling the weight of his betrayal. Moving in with her sister was supposed to be a fresh start, a semblance of safety and normalcy. Her sister's home was a stark contrast to the chaos she'd left behind. It was calm, filled with laughter and the simple routine of daily life. Sarah hoped it would be enough to help her heal. Starting a new job was another step toward rebuilding her life. It was a distraction, a way to keep her mind from spiraling into dark places. That's where she met Laura. Laura was sharp, funny, and genuinely kind. She sensed Sarah's distress almost immediately. "Hey, if you ever need to talk, I'm here," Laura said one day after a particularly tough meeting. Sarah appreciated the offer but kept the details of her ordeal private. She wasn't ready to open that box. But then Mike showed up at her workplace. Seeing him there, in her new sanctuary, was like a punch to the gut. He looked apologetic, but his presence felt like a threat. "I just want to apologize," Mike said, his voice oozing false sincerity. "Leave me alone, Mike," Sarah replied, her voice trembling but firm. Laura saw the encounter and insisted Sarah report it to the police. "You can't let him keep doing this to you," she said. But Sarah feared it would only escalate things. Under Laura's persistent support, Sarah finally opened up about her ordeal. She felt a mix of relief and fear, knowing she couldn't keep running from her past. Laura was shocked but determined to help. "We need to take action," Laura said. "Let's set a trap, gather evidence, and get the police involved." Sarah was hesitant. The idea of being bait in this twisted game terrified her. But she knew it might be the only way to end this nightmare. They devised a plan, involving the police and using Sarah as bait. The plan was simple but risky. Sarah arranged to meet Mike in a public place, with Laura and the police nearby. She felt her hands shaking as she waited, her heart racing with anxiety. Mike took the bait, revealing his true intentions as he tried to manipulate her once more. The police moved in, arresting him. He smirked as they took him away, a silent promise that this wasn't over. Sarah felt a temporary sense of victory but knew she had to remain cautious. With Mike in custody, she started to feel some relief. She began counseling to deal with the trauma and tried to mend her relationship with Tom. Their relationship was strained, but they both committed to rebuilding trust and moving forward. It was a long journey, one filled with painful conversations and moments of doubt. But Sarah was ready to face it head-on, determined to reclaim her life and find peace again. Sarah was sipping her coffee, trying to shake off the lingering tension from the past weeks, when an unexpected text pinged her phone. "Amy here. Heard about your ordeal. Let's meet." Amy? Sarah thought, her mind racing back to high school. Amy was now a private investigator. Could this be the break she needed? Meeting Amy at a small cafe felt like a lifeline. Sarah, it's been ages. I heard about everything. I want to help. Thanks, Amy. Honestly, any help is appreciated, Sarah said, feeling a glimmer of hope. Amy dived into Mike's background, her detective skills uncovering a disturbing pattern of manipulation and threats. It was worse than Sarah had imagined. Armed with this new evidence, Sarah felt a renewed sense of determination. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was standing up for everyone Mike had hurt. Pressing charges against Mike for harassment and stalking was a daunting step, but Sarah was ready. The court battle was grueling, each day a test of her resolve. Tom stood by her, showing genuine remorse and a commitment to making amends. Sarah's heart ached with the complexity of her feelings for him. Then came the bombshell. New evidence surfaced during the trial, revealing that Mike was involved in a larger criminal network. The courtroom buzzed with the revelation, and Sarah felt a mix of vindication and dread. Mike wasn't just a lone predator, he was part of something bigger and more dangerous. Justice felt closer, but the fight was far from over. Sarah remained vigilant, knowing Mike's connections could still pose a threat. One evening, a message from Dave popped up. Need to talk. Apologies in order. Against her better judgment, Sarah agreed to meet Dave. He looked remorseful, explaining how Mike had coerced him. Dave provided valuable information that strengthened Sarah's case. It was a strange twist, finding an ally in someone who had once been part of the problem. The media caught wind of the story, and suddenly, Sarah's life was under a microscope. Her face was everywhere, her story public. It was a double-edged sword. The exposure brought more pressure on Mike's associates, leading to several arrests and a crackdown on their criminal activities. But it also left Sarah feeling vulnerable and exposed. Amid the chaos, Laura discovered a betrayal that shook Sarah's already fragile trust in the system. Someone within the police department was leaking information to Mike's associates. It was a gut punch, but Amy stepped in, using her connections to root out the corrupt officer. Sarah's safety and the integrity of the investigation were restored, but her faith in the system was shattered. Finally, with Mike's network dismantled, he faced trial. Sarah stood in court, her voice unwavering as she recounted her ordeal. The weight of her experiences bore down on her, but she didn't flinch. Mike was convicted and sentenced to prison. His final words to her were chilling. "This isn't over, Sarah." Leaving the courtroom, Sarah felt a mix of victory and lingering fear. She had won, but at what cost? The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. She had faced her nightmare and emerged stronger. Now, it was time to rebuild her life, piece by piece, with a new understanding of her strength and resilience. Sarah stared at the ceiling, the silence of the house almost suffocating. Therapy. It was a word that once felt distant and irrelevant but now seemed like her lifeline. She started seeing Dr. Green, a therapist who came highly recommended. Each session peeled back layers of fear and anger, helping her build a new sense of self. "You need to face these emotions, Sarah," Dr. Green would say, her voice gentle yet firm. And so, Sarah did. She confronted the nightmares, the betrayal, and the constant state of vigilance she'd been living in. Tom joined her for some sessions, their relationship a delicate dance of rebuilding trust. It wasn't easy, and some days, Sarah wondered if they'd ever get back to what they once were. But they were trying, and that had to count for something. Then, just when she thought things might be settling down, her doorbell rang. She opened the door to find a woman with a haunted look in her eyes. "Emily?" Sarah asked, recognizing Mike's ex-girlfriend from photos. "I didn't know where else to go," Emily said, her voice shaking. "Mike's associates. They're after me." "Great. Just what I needed." But Sarah felt a sense of solidarity. She knew what it was like to be hunted. She took Emily in, and over late-night cups of tea, they shared their stories. It was oddly comforting, finding someone who truly understood the nightmare. "Maybe we should start a support group," Emily suggested one evening. And so, they did. What started as a small gathering of women sharing their experiences quickly grew into a full-fledged support group. Sarah found a new sense of purpose in helping others navigate their trauma. Turning her pain into a way to help others was surprisingly therapeutic. But peace was short-lived. Just as things started to feel normal, the anonymous threats began again. Notes slipped under the door, strange cars parked outside. Sarah suspected Mike's remaining associates, trying to intimidate her into silence. "Not this time," she muttered, picking up the phone to call Amy. Using her investigative skills, Amy tracked down the source of the threats, leading them to a small group of Mike's loyalists. With the evidence in hand, more arrests were made, dismantling the last remnants of Mike's network. Tom and Sarah decided it was time to take their security seriously. They upgraded their home security systems, ensuring every corner of their house was monitored. They also adopted a dog, Max, trained for protection. Max quickly became Sarah's constant companion, his presence a comforting reminder that she wasn't alone. One evening, as they were finally starting to feel a sense of security, Sarah received a message from a former associate of Mike's. He offered to testify against the remaining loyalists in exchange for protection. It was a risky move, but it led to more arrests and the final dismantling of Mike's network. With the immediate threat diminishing, Sarah felt a cautious relief. The shadows of her past were still there, but they were fading. She and Tom decided it was time for a fresh start. They moved to a new city, buying a small house in a quiet neighborhood. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt hopeful. She continued her work with the support group, finding new ways to empower and protect those who had faced similar ordeals. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but it was one she was learning to love. Rebuilding from the ashes of her trauma, Sarah discovered a strength she never knew she had. And with Tom by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Sarah's day started with a surprise. On their first anniversary in the new city, Tom handed her an envelope with a mischievous grin. "Pack your bags. We're going away for the weekend." The secluded cabin he rented was straight out of a fairy tale, nestled in the woods, surrounded by towering trees and the serene sound of nature. They spent the weekend reconnecting, talking late into the night, and rediscovering the love that had brought them together in the first place. Sarah felt a renewed sense of trust and hope for their future. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally putting the past behind them. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. Just as everything seemed perfect, Sarah received a letter from Mike in prison. It was filled with cryptic threats and promises of revenge. Her stomach knotted with fear, but she was done being a victim. She decided to confront this head-on, seeking advice from Amy and Dr. Green. With their support, Sarah took legal action. Her lawyer, Jane, who specialized in harassment cases, was relentless. The court granted a permanent restraining order, severely restricting Mike's privileges in prison. It was a small victory, but it brought a significant sense of relief. Meanwhile, Emily decided it was time to move away and start fresh in a different state. Sarah felt a mix of sadness and happiness for her friend. They threw Emily a farewell party, celebrating their resilience and the strong bonds they'd formed. Promising to stay in touch, Sarah knew this wasn't goodbye but a new chapter for both of them. Life continued to evolve. Sarah was offered a promotion at work, which required frequent travel. She felt torn but decided to embrace the opportunity with Tom's full support. The new role was challenging, but she found strength in her independence and success. It was empowering, a testament to how far she'd come. On one of her business trips, she ran into Jack, an old college friend who was now a successful entrepreneur. They caught up over coffee, reminiscing about old times. Jack offered her a partnership opportunity, a chance to further rebuild her life. She considered it, seeing it as another step forward in her journey. Her growing profile led to an invitation to speak at a national conference on harassment and stalking. Sharing her story was daunting, but Sarah knew it was important. Her speech was powerful, advocating for stronger protections for victims. The response was overwhelming, bringing her recognition and new opportunities to make a difference. With her life back on track, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. She and Tom celebrated their renewed relationship, appreciating the strength they'd found together. As they sat on their porch, watching the sunset, Sarah felt a profound sense of closure. The darkness that had once overshadowed her life was now just a distant memory. She had emerged stronger, ready to face whatever the future held with courage and resilience. The journey had been long and painful, but it had also been transformative. Sarah knew she was not defined by her past but by her strength and determination to overcome it. With Tom by her side and a future filled with promise, she felt ready for anything. Sarah was midway through her morning coffee when her phone buzzed with an unexpected message from Jack. "Let's meet for lunch. Got a proposition for you." Intrigued, she agreed, wondering what new twist life had in store. Over a meal at their favorite cafe, Jack laid it out. Sarah, I want you to be my business partner. A stake in the company, equal footing. What do you think? Her heart skipped a beat. Excitement surged, but so did caution. This was huge, but it also meant diving headfirst into a new world with fresh challenges. She voiced her concerns to Tom that evening. To her relief, he was wholly supportive. Go for it, Sarah. You've earned this. I'm with you all the way. Taking on the role was exhilarating, but it wasn't long before she hit her first roadblock. Some of Jack's existing partners were less than thrilled about her new position. They questioned her decisions, doubted her capabilities. It was infuriating, but Sarah wasn't one to back down. She worked twice as hard, her determination a blazing fire. Slowly but surely, she earned their respect, proving she belonged. Just as things started to settle, a mysterious investor appeared, offering a substantial sum of money for a share in their business. The deal seemed too good to be true, and Sarah's gut told her something was off. She dug deeper and uncovered a chilling connection. The investor had ties to Mike's old network. No way was she letting that kind of trouble back into her life. She and Jack rejected the offer, prioritizing their safety over quick cash. Their decision proved wise when their company became a target of corporate espionage. Sensitive information was being leaked, and Sarah had a sinking feeling it was linked to the spurned investor. She hired a top-notch security firm, and their investigation led to an alarming discovery. An insider working for the investor was behind the leaks. Confronting the mole was a tense showdown. The insider, sweating bullets, admitted to being blackmailed. Armed with evidence, Sarah and Jack took legal action. The case drew media attention, once again casting a spotlight on Sarah's resilience. She handled it with her usual grace and grit, solidifying her reputation in the industry. Realizing the importance of support, Sarah started collaborating with other business leaders who had faced similar threats. They formed a coalition to advocate for stronger business protections. It was empowering, and Sarah's leadership in this new venture brought her even more recognition and respect. But the real shocker came when they discovered the mysterious investor was none other than Mike's cousin, seeking revenge. Sarah's past had a nasty way of resurfacing. She worked closely with law enforcement, her determination unwavering. The cousin's arrest marked the final dismantling of Mike's network, bringing a profound sense of closure. With the threats finally behind her, Sarah could focus on the future. Her business thrived, and her advocacy work continued to grow. She felt empowered, knowing she had overcome immense challenges. Life, for once, felt hopeful and peaceful. Tom suggested a long overdue vacation. They deserved it. Together, they planned a getaway to a secluded beach, a place where they could leave their troubles behind and just be. As they watched the sunset, hand in hand, Sarah felt a deep sense of contentment. She had faced the darkness and come out stronger on the other side. It was a new dawn, and the future looked bright. Sarah stood at the airport gate, watching the planes take off and land, each one a symbol of the many places she'd visited lately. Her business partnership with Jack had flourished beyond her wildest dreams, leading to the expansion of their company into new markets. They'd opened offices in several major cities, and her frequent travels were a whirlwind of meetings, talks, and mentoring young entrepreneurs. She found a deep fulfillment in her work, a sense of purpose that had once seemed so elusive. A few months later, she was standing on a stage, accepting an award for her contributions to business and her advocacy for victims of harassment. The applause was overwhelming, but it was her speech that truly moved her. "This is for everyone who supported me," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "Without you, none of this would be possible." The recognition brought new opportunities, including a book deal to share her story and insights. She could hardly believe how far she'd come. Reconnecting with old friends and colleagues was another unexpected joy. Relationships that had been strained during her ordeal were now mended, bringing a sense of closure and happiness. She organized a reunion with her support group, celebrating their collective strength and resilience. It was a night filled with laughter, tears, and the comforting knowledge that they had all come out stronger on the other side. Sarah and Tom's 10th wedding anniversary approached, and they decided to renew their vows. Surrounded by close friends and family, the ceremony was emotional and joyous, marking a new chapter in their lives. It was a symbol of their enduring love and commitment, a testament to everything they'd overcome together. Feeling a deep sense of purpose, Sarah started a foundation to support victims of stalking and harassment. The foundation quickly gained traction, making a significant impact. She felt fulfilled knowing her experiences were helping others find safety and strength. One day, she received an unexpected offer to join the board of a major corporation, recognizing her leadership and resilience. She accepted, eager to bring her unique perspective to a larger platform. The new role was challenging, but she thrived, continuing to inspire those around her. Amidst all this, Sarah and Tom decided to adopt a child, expanding their family and bringing new joy into their lives. They adopted a young girl named Lily, who quickly became the center of their world. Lily's presence brought happiness and a sense of completeness to their family. They moved to a larger house in a beautiful neighborhood, creating a safe and loving environment for Lily. Sarah designed a special room for her, filled with books and toys, making it a haven for their new daughter. The business continued to grow, with Sarah taking on more leadership roles and mentoring young women in the industry. She became a role model and a powerful advocate for change. Jack, now a close family friend, often visited and supported Sarah's foundation and personal endeavors. On the anniversary of her foundation, Sarah hosted a grand gala, celebrating the achievements and impact they'd made. The event was a huge success, raising significant funds and awareness. The night was filled with joy and pride, as Sarah reflected on her journey and the lives she'd touched. Then came the news she'd been waiting for. Mike's appeals had been denied, and he would remain in prison for the foreseeable future. A deep sense of peace washed over her, knowing the threat was finally over. She and Tom took a moment to reflect on their journey, feeling grateful for their resilience and the love that sustained them. Sarah continued to thrive in her career and personal life, balancing her roles as a business leader, advocate, and mother. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment and happiness. As she watched Lily play in their backyard, she knew she had created a life of love, strength, and resilience. Ready to face any future challenges with confidence, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the bright future that lay